Buddy, thanks for joining us today, whether it's morning or afternoon for you. Thank you for being here. Today we are going to discuss 4 key considerations for video conferencing solutions, underlined by how Pexip gives enterprises a competitive edge. I'm Rob Arnold, a principal analyst with market research and consulting firm Frost & Sullivan. I'm joined by Chief Commercial Officer at Pexip, Tom Erik Lea. Tom Erik, would you like to say hello?
Of course. Hi, Rob. Nice to see you again. And hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I think, for some people. So my name is Tom Erik, one of the co-founders of Pexip and the Chief Commercial Officer. So I'll talk a little bit at the end here about Pexip and a couple of use cases that might illustrate some of the points that you actually are going to talk about in the beginning, Rob.
Okay, thank you. Just to go over our agenda real quickly, we're hoping to pack a lot of value into a short amount of time for everybody. The key considerations for deploying or enhancing video conferencing solutions, the top 4 that we're looking at here today is the ability to address evolving enterprise requirements. And, more recently that includes not only, phased, planned evolution over time, but also more dynamic and immediate needs that are changing. Addressing changing end user needs and how important that is to drive adoption, utilization, ROI, and business value. We're going to take a look at the importance of focusing on flexibility and innovation in your prospective solution provider, because ideally you want to partner with a leader and not a follower. And as Tom Erik mentioned, we're going to discuss some customer references. It's important to ensure that your provider has real customer references and case studies that resonate with your needs. And finally, we're going to wrap up with a Q&A. Using the Q&A function in the On24 portal here, you can submit your questions at any time, and we'll get to those at the end of our session. So let's dig in. Every year, Frost & Sullivan conducts a number of surveys in different segments of technology and verticals and regions. This set of statistics here is from a technology maturation, adoption, and investment survey that we conducted and wrapped up in late 2019. And what we found is that IT stakeholders across the world, across organization sizes and different industries, are beginning to perceive and expect that their investments should deliver additional business value than was expected in the past. So if you look at the top 4 here, improving teamwork, information management, customer experience, as well as operational costs, those are varied from years in the past, where cost reduction was consistently the #1 ranking for years and years, and now it's slipped to #4, as while that is still important, people expect to get actually more from productivity, business efficiency, and business agility from their technology investments. But to improve the chances of attaining those benefits, we need a new approach. We can't deploy hardware-laden, monolithic, siloed solutions that we had in the past, or products, as they were more rightly called. These solutions now need to be more flexible, robust, and future-proof. So again, this was wrapped up in 2019. As such, we think that some of the responses may have changed priority given the impact of COVID-19. So, but it is important to understand that organizations, leaders were already leaning in this direction prior to the pandemic.
Yeah. And I think just the comment on what we see as well as Pexip, I think one of the things a lot of people now realize is how important video actually is in order to maintain that connectivity with your team and with your organization. And where I think it would have been awful just to use audio as an example. So hopefully people starting to see more of the value of video now. That, I mean, I've been preaching for 25 years, hoping that people will actually start to build that out in the organization. So I'm so glad actually that this change from cost to more of productivity is gaining importance.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I'm a heavy video user, and it was already a part of my everyday life, and now it is even much more so.
Yeah.
So to move forward, looking at the current state of communications environments, what we can see is that the status today of the way enterprises have deployed and consumed their communications technologies is very diverse and complex. So one size obviously does not fit all. Enterprises need to deploy and consume solutions in a way that align with their unique needs. And in the course of the pandemic, of course, it's likely that the negative impacts of these fragmented environments has been more severely felt by organizations that have silos that disallow users from different sites or departments to effectively share information with one another. And that's where we lived in the past, and that's definitely what we should look to overcome as we move forward. There continues to be a strong demand to support and utilize existing investments, assets in technology, even while moving forward with newer investments in technologies. And this can obviously present some issues with usability and management and security. So it's increasingly important that a well-designed strategy be in place, whether or not the transition is a long-term one or a short-lived one. We need to make sure that we bridge those gaps along the way.
We just got a question in here because on my comment on productivity on your first chart, actually, and I think productivity to me is that if you can improve your organization, if you can improve your customer engagement, if you can improve kind of how you communicate, that is part, to me at least, of improving your overall productivity. Just answering that question that just came in.
It's a good question, and it's a good point. Yeah, we need to make sure that we measure productivity in ways that are meaningful to our own organizations, not by defined by a certain legacy metric. So what the bottom line is and what the business outcome is what we need to be looking at in today's age. So those issues that I quickly outlined on the previous slide, from complex and diverse deployment environments, is validated here in this slide, where this is a different survey of over 1,600 IT stakeholders around the world and across verticals, saying that they do fully expect challenges to exist, even as they try to move forward. So it's important to be forward-looking in the solutions that we select. Organizations have scaled their environments recently, or they've provisioned new services quickly to enable work from home or work from sheltered places. And I think that's great. Everyone is now connected. But we believe the next phases of business continuity programs will be to prioritize on security and integration and reliability, manageability, and right-sizing those deployments to ensure that, okay, everyone is connected. Let's get our hands around this and control what we're doing so that we can measure what business impact it's actually having and ensure it's controlled and reliable. Would you agree with that, Tom Eric? I mean, within the Pexip user base, what I understand is that the usage is skyrocketed within existing accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we saw that as one thing is all the existing customers that suddenly had the same challenges as I think everyone else, is that people had to work from home. So you had to scale up your existing solutions, as well as a lot of customers coming in now needing to suddenly enable all their users very quickly, and without them actually coming into the office. So everything needed to be more or less self-served. So of course that's huge challenges specifically for IT, how to roll that out in a safe and sound way. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and there's a question that just came in here. Some of these are very contextual, so I want to make sure we get to them within the flow of the conversation. Do you expect the investments now, or once everything turned back to normal and people realize the need for alternatives to face-to-face meetings? Do you want to take that, Tom Eric, or shall I?
Yeah, so this is coming back to I think one of the things that has been challenging on video is that I think a lot of people haven't taken the time to actually switch on the camera, to spend time to actually start using the tools that you have been provided for video. And I think that actually, I mean, usage and adoption is probably one of the biggest challenges we see out there, how to actually get users start using the tool. When you are used to use the tool, you tend to use it even more, and you are getting better at it, and you do it more efficiently. So on one side, I think that this tragedy that we are in the middle of right now, at least in our industry, trigger a lot of usage that will be sustainable. I think people will not go back and work just in the normal way. They got a taste of what video can do. So I think it probably, and I'm looking so forward to get into the office and meet my colleagues and those things. But I think this has probably opened up a couple of things. One is for IT to see how they can scale in a better way. And I love your chart then with going from on-premise to cloud. And I think we see, and I think everybody now experience how much easier it is to actually scale if you either have a software as a service solution or a self-hosted where you have deployed it in the cloud compared to the old traditional hardware that you had to ship out. So I think from IT point of view, I think some of the things that you talked about has become even more important. And then for users, I think so many users now have been used to communicate on video. And I think that will continue. And I don't think we'll go straight back to where we were, but I don't know what you see.
Yeah, I think it will be somewhere in the middle, as a matter of fact. And you're right. I mean, so many more people have been exposed to it now and gained that comfort level. As a matter of fact, you may have seen me shaking my head. My daughter just walked in. We've lowered the barrier in terms of formality with video through this whole pandemic, and people are more willing to ignore or accept the little distractions like a child walking in or the dog barking, for example, or accept the fact that someone may need to do a video call from their kitchen table or from their living room. And I think that's really going to help. And that's really how video should be. It should be dynamic. It should be more informal. I remember, I don't know if you've noticed me taking a sip of coffee through this call, but in the past, I remember being told after calls, you cannot drink water during your video call. And why not? We're just having a conversation. If I was across the table in a conference room from Tom Eric, I would certainly be drinking coffee with him. So I think there's a lot of good things that come out of this in terms of acceptance, the exposure, the confidence level that people need to use it on a regular basis, as well as IT, as you said, Tom Eric, and administrators getting their arms around, how to manage it on a greater scale. So let's move forward here. So these top challenges, year after year, these are fairly consistent. Unlike the drivers that are changing priority, we see the security issue, the reliability, which has really been shored up in the past 5 to 10 years in video conferencing compared to a decade ago, is remarkable. Systems integration and managing multi-vendor solutions, which we'll get into some more in a little bit. But to move forward, it takes a provider to be successful. They have to have complete awareness of the evolving enterprise requirements and have that agility to address them in a timely fashion. And whether that's over a phased roadmap or more of immediate needs, as we spoke about, with the current situation, they have to solve the enterprise pain points, no matter when they happen, planned or unplanned. So they have to be able to address the ability to offer a smooth transition to the cloud, whether a different type of solution is needed in one industry or another, software as a service, private cloud, platform as a service, it has to be there. At the enterprise's discretion. Seamless interop across new and legacy technologies so that you can utilize those existing endpoints and some of the infrastructure that still has value. The ability to scale for large meetings, all hands calls, getting people on the same page now is more important than ever. And the ability to do that in the future, I think everyone recognizes the value of that. Maintaining a focus and even tightening our focus on data security, compliance, and privacy as we look at more highly distributed teams and organizations. And then finally, integration with existing workplace tools and platforms. So here we're talking about usability and allowing for end users to have more efficient workflows that incorporate the technology, like integrations with popular calendaring tools or single sign-on technologies in Active Directory, so that they can just hop into their applications and really reduce that friction of usage. Mm-hmm. So this right here is a snapshot. As we look at users, I just spoke about the importance of reducing that friction for users, the importance of integration with workflows so that the tools are more efficient to feed into that productivity that Tom Eric spoke about earlier. A snapshot of data points here from leading consulting, market research, and information companies about the state of the modern workforce and how they prefer to work. And these metrics are pre-pandemic. So we can assume that the responses would be as strong, if not stronger now. And the important thing here is that Gen X, Y, and Z have specific preferences for the tools that they think help them to be successful. And if they think they're successful, they're feeding into the greater success of their organization. Note the bottom stat here. It's increasingly critical to ensure that the workforce is continuously engaged, not only today, but tomorrow. And in 4 months from now, when things start to normalize a little bit more, we need the tools to keep the workforce engaged in their work and with each other and with customers. And I think that as I move forward here, one way to do that, stakeholders are more and more recognizing that technology just needs to work, right? For communications, information sharing, and team collaboration at the very least, 72% of those that we polled, and we polled over 1,000 in this particular survey, they do recognize that the way to engage employees, at least in part, is by providing experiences that work similarly to those that we have in our personal lives. It can't be clunky. It can't be friction full or restrictive, or else people aren't going to use it. And that has actually been part of the improvements and enhancements that have rapidly taken place in video conferencing that have aided this meteoric rise of adoption that we saw prior to the beginning of the year when it exploded in usage. I think we're getting there. Work from home, as we mentioned, has lowered the barrier. So I think we recognize, again, the interruptions, the glitches that we may have in the user error, forgetting to turn on my camera or mute or things like that. Those are more acceptable now. The most important thing is being able to connect in rich ways to share information.
And maybe that's where we in the industry have a further way to go, because I think one thing is to create a fantastic experience if you all are maintained in your kind of in your own solution. And as consumers, as lead for me, I mean, when I talk to my kid, I might use FaceTime. When I talk to my oldest daughter, I'm using WhatsApp. And so you kind of all using different tools. I think maybe one of the challenges that we have in the enterprise is you are not free to choose a new application every time you want to communicate with somebody. So I think being in this industry, I feel still there's a long way to go before we really make this seamless and easy for users, specifically if you want to go outside your own little bubble and solution. So, but this should be an eye-opener. It is important.
And that's a great segue. I mean, we do require easy-to-use solutions, even if you're a power user like we are. I use a lot of different solutions throughout the week. The main thing is they need to be intuitive and they have to deliver a consistent experience. You have to be able to navigate the menus. Where do I mute? How do I select my peripheral from all the different cameras that I have and things like that. And as you mentioned, Tom Erik, the importance of being able to access all of your applications regardless of device. You may not be able to pick the application that IT gives you, but you should be able to use the device that's right for your task and your location at a given time, whether it's desktop, mobile, or meeting rooms. And I think that does make a difference. And as I mentioned earlier, applications that are built to integrate with workflows and how you schedule a meeting, creating a calendar invite should be the same. And you just have a plugin or you copy, paste an invitation to make it easy, or to be able to broadcast your meeting or your conference on social media, whether it's enterprise or consumer social media, so that you can share that information as content, whether live or recorded. And again, it's all about sharing various types of content so that it can provide that richness and context to the conversation that, as we mentioned earlier, audio only just does not support.
And I think just a small comment as well, if I may. Sorry about this, Rob.
No, go ahead.
But I think also, I mean, based on the survey you had around the budget, where half of the budget are used to maintain what you have. I mean, unless you are able to plug in somehow the new stuff and things, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to kind of grow and scale your solution in a way, in a different way. If everything you have to do is always rip and replace, I mean, it will not happen. Specifically, not in larger organizations. It's close to impossible.
That's right. It doesn't happen. That's how we get those environments that we showed earlier that are so complex. So the ability to execute on all of these market dynamics is the reason why my team at Frost & Sullivan has recognized Pexip for excellence in this fast-growing and increasingly competitive market, right? There are so many solutions out there to choose from. We recognized Pexip, and I'll tell you why. For a number of things that were foundational to the company at the beginning, whereas competitors are only now recognizing or hearing demands from enterprises to do some of these. Pexip set out from the beginning to address these market gaps. Innovation and success by the company has actually compelled a long list of others to follow Pexip's lead. From architectural flexibility that is built for elasticity and reliability and quality at scale, to the interop across multi-vendor services, to be able to communicate with your partners or other pieces of the organization with those existing assets or preferences. If they're on, say, a Microsoft or Google, why should you not be able to speak with them if you're on another service? It should not work that way, and Pexip recognized that and set out to address it. The technology interop, the ability to leverage those investments that you've already made going forward without pitching them out. And deployment diversity. A single solution that can be deployed as a service on a monthly subscription, private cloud, whether enterprise owned or Pexip owned and dedicated to an organization, or integrated with on-premises components. We don't see competitors in the market being able to check these boxes that Pexip has established. Just to highlight some of the innovation, I talked about the elastic scalability, the software-based infrastructure at a time when a lot of competitors were still holding tight with two hands on the hardware-centric approach. Deployment flexibility, as cloud was just starting to emerge, Pexip saw that opportunity 5 years out before the others really decided to commit. The interop, again, that's a story that I think is going to make more and more of a difference as organizations don't want to be locked in or do need that ability to integrate multi-vendor services. From the UX, the user experience, WebRTC, I remember using Pexip WebRTC meetings before others had the bravery to go there. Zero download, no plugins to remove the friction from the user or guest experience is a really big thing. But also to be able to join a meeting with full functional access without any restrictions. Some services you joined and there is no recording, there is no chat, there is no joining with certain browsers. So I applaud Pexip for its early commitment to WebRTC that others are now fully embracing and still trying to catch up. Now, that one of the hottest areas in the collaboration market is AI. And the latest from Pexip, again, is a step forward and not a step to catch up with others, is adaptive composition, which is software that acts like a virtual producer. Provides things like auto framing to ensure that participants are always ideally in view, so that they can just be natural and focus on their meeting and their content. Intelligent layout, which ensures that the most active speakers are always on screen. You know how some of these solutions you have to scroll and you can't really tell who was saying what 2 minutes ago. Intelligent layout prioritizes the speakers so that you can tell who said what and when, be able to track that type of information and who you should be speaking to about a certain point that was made just a couple of minutes ago. And again, some of the issues we've seen with competitive solutions are addressed with new meeting indicators from Pexip that give the host more insight into what's happening in the meeting and more control. Because as we've seen, and I've done it too, people join from different devices and at different times, or join the wrong meeting, or they start recording in the middle of a conversation. So these functionalities give the host the information they need to reduce those disruptions during the meeting. Things such as attendee count and locking and recording status, again, allowing just a concentration on the conversation at hand.
Yeah, and I think just to be frank, if you well, you can start it. I think one of the things that we really are passionate about is to find ways where we really get people to be engaged, as you also saw kind of or said earlier around the importance of that. And I think that's what excites me with this adaptive composition, is that it put people in the front, in the center. So as an example, if you have a room with 5 people, they get more real estate because we know there are 5 people in the room. If you have 7 people in front of their computer, we frame them so every kind of person have the same size. And just easy things like that to create a much better experience. So we're really, really exciting. It's in technology preview in our current Infinity platform. So, and you can read more about it on online. But I think that is really what our mission is about, is to create people, or make, not create people, but ensure people are engaged. And our vision is to make these virtual meetings better than meeting in person. And I guess, sadly now, that is actually the only way to meet right now. But I think even though down the road, I think there are so many advantages that you can put into these virtual meetings. From me being very bad at remembering names, and specifically foreign names, and just have the name tag to people in the meeting, and being able to not having to remember all the names is just making the experience so much better. So that was kind of a little bit of our mission and vision. But I think what I'd like to do, just to give you a highlight of a couple of customer cases. I was just asked to have one slide around Pexip. What I would say is that we started back in 2011. I think maybe and it's a Norwegian-based company with kind of development in the UK and in Oslo. And I think our Nordic UK kind of DNA made us kind of be cautious and build kind of a brick on top of a brick. So we've had a steady increase of revenue that we all have feeded back into sales and products. So that's our mantra. And I think we probably one of the few in our area, at least from the startups, that really have been funded on our own cash flow. So we kind of have control of our own destiny, which we are proud of. And we're even more proud of some of the customers that we have been able to work with to really get this working. And I think what's interesting around the customers we have is that they are across every industry. So video is, in a way, can be used for any organization, for any type of meetings. And I'll give you 3 examples of how customers have been using the solution, maybe also to also kind of demonstrate some of the points that you have talked about, Rob, but also demonstrate the Pexip solution as such. So the first one is a large multinational bank. They have employees in more than 160 countries, and I think I knew them back from my Tamberg days when I started to work there. So these were early adopters on video and really embraced video communication, and they have lots of conference rooms deployed out there. I think one of their challenges, as you mentioned, they all based everything on-premise video conferencing infrastructure, which is okay up until a certain level, because when you're starting to scale out beyond kind of your headquarters in a way, you need to find better ways to scale. So one of the things they did was to replace that infrastructure with Pexip for two reasons, actually. The first one was that we have a completely distributed system, so you can roll this out in the regions where you are, and you can scale up where you see traffic comes. And because it's all kind of distributed, you have a single admin interface. So from the IT and management support point of view, it's so much easier because it's like managing one big kind of cloud where you decide where to deploy it. And then because the platform is virtual, it means that you could run them on some of the servers you already have on premise. But in this case, what the customer did was they actually now scaling up using Microsoft Azure. So almost like into your hybrid model here, where use what you have and use the cloud to scale in a decent way. And I think one of the things that actually also made this customer scale even further was they were using a lot of video, and they had installed Skype for Business clients on their users' desktop. And actually what happens when they install Pexip was that suddenly all of their thousands of users could use their already installed application Skype for Business to call into Pexip meetings. So suddenly your user base, you didn't have to roll out a new software and use the Pexip application. You could actually use the application you already had installed on your user's desktop. So all of that just made the users skyrocket. And then you talked about WebRTC, which was another one, because then this company had also a big need of inviting people to their meetings. And I think one of the things that a lot of enterprises don't like is that if I'm invited to a meeting, I have to download another application and install it on my laptop to actually join the meeting. So one of the things that they also utilize within the Pexip solution here is that the pure WebRTC. So when they invite people in other branches, locations, customers or partners, they actually use just the WebRTC plug-in free WebRTC browser base. So all on this kind of enable them to grow quite quickly in terms of usage. And of course, based on the latest kind of COVID, this has skyrocketed. I think now also what's really interesting, and that's also into my next example, is they're now also piloting kiosks in bank branches to enable to connect with their end clients. So this is, I would say, a typical user that kind of moves from on-premise and into the cloud through a hybrid. And maybe one day they will be pure kind of cloud-based. Who knows? The second example I just want to mention is a completely different use case. But I think one of the things that I think video is perfectly suited for is for you to kind of build more trust with your customers and partners. And there are certain verticals that we see need this more than others, to put it that way, or where trust is really, really important. So finance, banking is one obvious one. I think healthcare and telehealth is obviously one big vertical. And I think this is one example from the Veteran Affairs in the US. So the Veteran Affairs, they are the one that take care of the military US veterans and their healthcare. And obviously, challenges is that they serve more than 10 million US war veterans. And they are placed all over. So finding ways where they can give better healthcare specifically into veterans that are struggling with mental health issues without them having to come into kind of the central office or the connection centers is vital. Now, this is good. The challenge is, of course, that on one hand, you already have a system out there to connect with these veterans. You have administration tools, you have a website that you actually monitor this or you run this. So one of the things that we worked together with Veteran Affairs with was, of course, that they needed to plug in video, and they wanted to do it easy. So using our WebRTC client, building out their own and integrate into that workflow they already had working, made this an extremely powerful solution. And of course, this is all run with their self-hosted solution so that they can completely lock down and secure their environment where only they have access to the data. Because this is really kind of sensitive data. And again, we've seen tremendous growth within psychology support, and they're building out new type of health services now actually, where to connect to their patients. So that's another way using Pexip meeting and our platform, but kind of integrated into a vertical application. So I think that is going to be huge moving forward. The third examples that I just want to quickly mention is when you talked about interoperability. And I think this is a great example. This is Accenture. I think most people know who Accenture is, global management consulting services firm. I have a lot of people rolled out. So one of the things they were a big Microsoft shop. At the same time, they rolled out these standard video conferencing room systems globally. So they were kind of having this problem that we really want to kind of continue and roll out, and we roll out Skype for Business, and we're moving to Teams, but we did this huge investment in standard-based video conferencing gear. So one of the benefits here and how they use, of course, Pexip is that Pexip will provide that interoperability so that you can still use your standard-based video conferencing rooms and connect into either Skype for Business meetings or into Microsoft Teams meetings. So this is a completely different way where you have another meeting service. And this is something that we provide both for Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business, but also for Google Meet. Okay, that was just 3 quick examples. And I see, so we just got a questions around interoperability.
Yep. Okay, what functionality do subscribers get with Microsoft Teams and Google Interop from a participant and a host perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think from the host perspective, he will use his current workflow. So he will go into his Outlook as an example and schedule his Teams meeting. And as he sends out the invitation, automatically you will have ways and addresses to actually call in from a standard-based video conferencing system. So there's the same workflow. And the same with Google Meet. You schedule a Google Meet in Google Calendar. And if you have this interoperability, you will have additional information that you can use to call in from a standard-based video room. Now, if you move this one step further, you might have even installed one-touch join from Pexip, so that when you walk into the conference room, you will actually just look at the touch panel and you will see your next Microsoft Teams meeting, press the button, and you're into the call. If it's a Google meeting, you have that. And of course, what we do is that we support all of the other meeting services. So only one button, one touch to join kind of panel, you will of course be able to walk into the same conference room independent of it's a Microsoft Teams meeting you want to have, or if it's a Google meeting you want to have, or if it's a Zoom meeting or WebEx meeting, or of course Pexip meeting.
Okay. Very good. Let's see. We expect to reduce our video conferencing needs as the pandemic winds down. Okay. Well, we did speak earlier about our expectations for it to somewhat normalize, but the confidence or the user adoption to remain high. But the second part of this is, what are the options to flex or scale down when that happens, Tom Erik?
Yeah, well, good question. I hope that people see the benefit of using video, so there's less less need to scale down. But of course, this all depends on how you want to consume your service. If you buy a Pexip cloud service, you can buy it on a monthly basis, or you can buy it on a yearly basis. So obviously you can scale up and down as you like. If you bought the Pexip self-hosted software, one thing is that you buy the software from us, but what that software actually doing is work integrated with Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services, and where it can be able to scale up and down on the compute as you need. So this is not something that is relevant today, but also tomorrow, because you might have different types of meeting on different time zones as well. So being able to scale up and down automatically in your time zone is one of the things that you get with the platform. And I think it's important as well, as you scale kind of on demand, if you like. So it's extremely flexible, but it's all back to initially then, how do you buy it? And do you buy kind of monthly contracts or yearly contracts? But of course, compute is becoming a bigger and bigger expense in your overall kind of collaboration cost.
Okay, good. So flexibility obviously means a number of things as we refer to it. Are there any plans to integrate with other conferencing platforms like Adobe Connect, GoToMeeting, BlueJeans, etc.?
So from a very good question. We do support a variety of other conference services. So if you, for example, register your Cisco or TELECOM conference room with Pexip, you will be able to dial most standards-based kind of meeting services, as well as Skype for Business and Teams and Google. And then eventually where it's questions around Adobe and GoToMeeting. Those are not, it's on the list, but it's not something that we currently support.
Okay. And I see that we have almost a dozen questions and comments, and we did promise to try to keep it concise for everybody. So we'll take one more, and then we'll follow up with the rest post-call. Okay. Any plans for Teams dial-out to call SIP endpoints using CVI? That one might be above my technicality.
I think that's a great question. It's something we get as a customer request quite a bit. And I think that is a question that needs to be handed over to Microsoft. We will be able to support it, but it needs to be supported in the client itself. So as an example, in Skype for Business, you will be able to call directly to a video conferencing system because it's actually able to do that within the client. For Teams, that is not possible today. But this is a very, very hot topic that we hear from a lot of our customers that have rolled out Teams.
Okay. Thank you for that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. As I just mentioned, we didn't get to all the questions or respond to all the comments, but please do submit your questions or follow up with us here over these various vehicles here. And we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks again for joining, everyone, and be safe. Cheers.
Cheers. See you all. Stay safe.
Oops, sorry, I was on mute. All right, we are wrapped up and offline.
Excellent.
Okay, how do you guys feel about it? Did that go okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, very natural feeling.
I almost feel like we should have, based on the question, I think it's so many good questions. So I wished almost like we could have another session and just answer the questions that are coming in, because I think the dialogue, when we had the dialogue, it's so good.
Yeah, follow-up questions. Gosh, I mean, I know that what